I wonder if you could share with us some of the developmental tasks that practitioners can commonly avoid.
Well, they can try to avoid. They're never going to be successful, but they often don't know that yet. You know, after all these years, I'm still finding parts of myself that I've been avoiding.
Hmm.
My wife is getting better and better at identifying for me, but at the same time, you know, being willing to work with me around them, and I try to do the same for her. But right now, I seem to be the one on the block. So I don't know about developmental tasks, but I wanted to talk about two tasks. One is a kind of core wounding that we've talked about, that sense of self as defective, or not good enough, or weak, or all the different ways we think of that. That's one of the deepest core woundings, I think, that we come out of childhood with, or come out of different stages of adulthood with. We can make a lot of headway with that. That doesn't have to sit there for a lifetime, especially when we realize that this has to do with parts of us, not all of us, parts of us that feel this way. Our core self does not feel this way. Our core self is what Trungpa called basic goodness. Right? And so these wounds take place with other parts, not with that core self. And I was reminded of a statement of Nelson Mandela's, where he said, "You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world." It's so incredible. You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. Nisargadatta said something very similar in one of his responses to a student who was struggling with desire. He didn't seem to be able to get rid of desire. Nisargadatta says to him, "Look, the problem is not with your desire. The problem is that your desires are too small." Isn't that wonderful? Mm-hmm. And at a later point, he talks about bringing all of our desires and longings together into one great longing. And that's what is the pathway, the doorway to awakening. One great longing. Because again, that gets a bad reputation in a lot of Buddhist circles. Any kind of longing is supposedly unwholesome.
Yeah.
So that's one kind of core wound. Another, which is more interesting, is avoiding our own perfection or our own wholeness. Now here we're using perfection in a different way than we were when we were talking about narcissism. Evading or what Trungpa called our basic goodness. That's fascinating. Why would we want to evade our basic goodness? Mm-hmm. Why do we have so much trouble approaching it? I can think of maybe some factors. A parent or a teacher who says, you know, who do you think you are? What makes you think you know or you can do? And that is like an arrow inside. Oh, maybe I can't. Maybe I can't do that. Or if I do it, I'm going to incur the wrath of this other person who's telling me I can't. Or maybe they're an authority figure in my life and I can't present myself as too capable, or they'll be jealous, or they'll be envious, or they'll be something. I had a poetry professor as an undergraduate named John Logan. He was an Irish poet with 11 kids and an alcohol problem, but he was a brilliant poet and a wonderful teacher. And he wrote the last book of poetry that I have from him is called Ghosts of the Heart. And on the back of it is a meditation about the unicorn. The unicorn is a symbol of the wounded healer or the wounded artist. And he writes in this meditation, for too long, because he's been accused of losing his Catholic Christian poetry. He said, for too long I was mesmerized by the wound on the neck of the unicorn, and I missed the power and the beauty of the glorious beast underneath. And we have trouble with that.
We get lost in the wound.
Yeah, we get lost, we get preoccupied with the wounding,
Yeah.
and we lose or forget or don't connect with our real core nature.
Yeah.
It's one reason I started a few years ago, I started working with horses. Actually became a certified equine massage therapist. Where do these things come from? But part of what drew me to horses was they, at their core, they're not, no matter how domesticated they are, they're not completely tamed. There's a wildness at the core. And we have trouble with that wildness.
Yeah. And what I'm struck by with that image is that it's what was not in your description was let's heal the wound. It's more let's make sure we look at the wildness and see if we can touch that. And that I can spend probably my entire life just trying to heal the wound, but I miss something that's already there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. At the end of this meditation, John Logan wrote a verse I've never forgotten. He said, it's not the skeleton in our closet that we fear, it's the God.
Yeah. Not the skeleton, but the God.
Yeah. And that really is true.
Yeah.
And then Andrew Harvey, in his book, A Journey in Ladakh, he ran into a Rinpoche up there in the plateau. And the Rinpoche gives him this incredible teaching, which is still, I think, the most powerful teaching I've come across. As long as there is samsara, there will be an evasion of the inner perfection that is man's essence. This is perhaps the saddest of all the tragedies of samsara and the most painful. A man is starving in one dark room, while in another, just across the corridor from him, there is enough food for many lives, for eternity. But he has to walk to that room, and before he can walk to it, he has to believe it is there. No one else can believe for him. No one can bring the food from that room to him. Even if they could, he would not believe in the food, nor be able to eat it. To be taught, they have to want to listen. And to learn, they have to have the humility to want to change. No one can make them listen or want to change. We are free to become bodhisattvas or consign ourselves to life after life with pain. Often when men say they are helpless, trapped, imperfect, they are really saying, I do not want to endure my own perfection. Unbelievable. Yeah. I do not want to bear my own reality. Imperfection is more comforting, more human than perfection. Many men want to believe that man is imperfect because it makes it easier to live with their own imperfection, more forgiving toward themselves. And this is wonderful. And who can blame them? To understand that even despair at oneself can be a deception, or in our words, a spiritual bypassing, perhaps the most dangerous. And to discover an inner power that is completely good and gentle is frightening. It robs us of every comfort, every safety and resignation or irony. More forms of spiritual bypassing. Who can live naked to his own perfection? And yet who, once seeing and acknowledging his own perfection, could bear not to try to realize it in living? To see it is hard. To realize it within life is the hardest thing. Somewhere men know that, and that is why they cover up their knowledge. They prefer the nightmare of samsara, which they know, to the awakening, which they do not. And in a sense, they are right. Once they have acknowledged reality, they will have to learn how to die into it. They will have nowhere to hide anymore, no corner of the world to feel safe in any longer. They will have to abide nowhere and alight on nothing.